Okay, let's begin the 10th lesson. This is a second of a series of 2 on the text, that is, on the Latin that Gregorian chant uses. The first was, it detailed the pronunciation rules of Latin. Now we have to look at the accentuation of the Latin word. This instruction is going to be centered mostly on the accent of the Latin word. Accent comes from the Latin ad plus cantus. And you can see to the song. That indicates that the accent is the syllable of the word that's most sung. You raise the voice in a kind of, as if you were to sing it. And the way you can get an idea of that is to think of the Southern European languages, which tend to really have a kind of sing-song intonation. We'll come back to that. But for now, we have to get a little background and realize that in the heyday of Latin culture, around the time of Cicero, which would be the first century before Christ, the first 100 years before Christ, there were 2 levels of language. One called the Sermo Urbanus, which was the more refined kind of speech, and the accentuation there was based on the length of syllables. There were 2 kinds of syllables, long and short, and the words were thus intoned and distinguished from one another by their long and short syllables. That gives the iamb and the trochee and that kind of thing, that dactyls that you talk about in more ancient poetry, whether Greek or Latin. There's a development in the manual, if you're interested in that, and goes into the various kinds of words as they are classified according to quantity. There's another kind of speech that was current at that time, which was the Sermo Plebeius. The first one was Sermo Urbanus, that is the more refined. Now the Sermo Plebeius, which was the language common to the man on the street, the level common to the man on the street. And this was characterized by an equalization of the duration of the syllables. No longer was there long and short syllables. They were all rather reduced to the same length. And consequently and correspondingly, the accent took on more and more of an importance. The difference between these 2 refined and normal level of speech can kind of be tasted in the difference between the kind of hierarchical level of English, which is characterized of the King James Version of the Bible, and the everyday kind of American usage. So that would be the difference between the refined speech and the normal level of speech. Well, the church inherited the second level of, because you see the church, the first level gradually faded out, and the church came after Cicero. So by that time, the accent was beginning to prevail in the pronunciation of Latin. Now, the accent itself is involves a slight melodic and intensive elevation, which is short. So the characteristics, this is rather important, the characteristics of the accent is its high, short, and intense. Now the intensity is not a brutal intensity. It's a rather discrete intensity. So that to hammer out an accent is to go too far. So based on the accent, we can, again, I think this is the third time, make a division of the Latin words into three kinds. One, monosyllables, which are unaccentuated. Of themselves, they are unaccentuated. Et, tu, said, no accent. The second are spondees, which have the accent on the next to last syllable. Deus, facit, cantus. The third are dactyls. Remember, the dactyl is named after the finger. Dominus. The accent is on the third to last syllable, and that holds even if the word is very long. So, for example, immissionibus, immissionibus. There, the accent is there. 1, 2, 3, that makes a dactyl. And if we were to change that to emisiones, there, 1, it's the accent is on the second to last syllable, and so that's a spondee. So the three classes of Latin words according to accentuation: monosyllables, spondees, and dactyls. Now let's go to the book and take a look, make a little survey of how the Gregorian chant treats the accent. That is, how is it clothed with melody? How is it clothed with notes? We have a little development here on accentuation and melodic development. The first instance here shows you how there can be what we call melisms, or vocalises, long passages on one note. And here it's the accent of jubilate that is amplified to more than one line. All of that on the accent of jubilate, which kind of, you can see that it's kind of a word picture or a musical picture of what it is to jubilate, to let your soul kind of get carried away with the joy. Then another example shows the opposite possibility. There are some times when the accent is clothed with only one note, and the other syllables are clothed with, well, more or less developed neumes. With regard to melodic elevation, the normal situation is shown over here on the left. The normal treatment of an accentuated syllable is to put it on the high side of the melody. Finius. See, it's the highest notes that go to the accent. But you also find, as an exception though, you can also find an inversion. That is, the accent of de super is on the first syllable, whereas the general slope of the melody goes from low to high. It ends, starts low and ends high. So you have a kind of melodic inversion there. With regard to intensity, this next example shows a climb of the melody from fa to do, and preparing a do re mi, which is on the accent of victimas. Et immolans victimas. See, and immolating victims. This is Moses making a sacrifice. It's taken from an offertory of the gradual. So the accent of immolans, this is the point of the example here. This accent here is caught up in the preparation of this summit. Everything is working and pushing and urging itself toward the final accent, which is the summit of the piece. But this accent here is caught up in that whole wave of development. And so that the accent is going to hover over the rest of the word, but nevertheless it'll have a specific, a special intensity over and above the context in order to lift it out of the context and make it a more intense moment there in that development. The accent is the soul of the word. It's the center of the word to which all the preceding syllables converge and from which the following syllables fall away. So that makes the accent makes a kind of dividing line in the Latin word, and we can name each of the phases. There's a first phase of increase, which terminates with the summit at the tonic accent, and then afterwards a falling away, a decrease. You call the first phase the protasis, and then the second phrase the apodosis. So the apodosis then would be the part of the word that all of the syllables which follow the accent. And the protasis includes all of the syllables that come before the accent. So we have this kind of structure. We have the protasis ending up at the tonic accent, and then afterwards the falling off of the apodosis. Concretely, we'll take an example. Let's take a long word. Jubilationibus. So a hyphen between all of those syllables. Where is the accent? The accent is on O. It sounds like this. Jubilationibus. Jubilationibus. Okay. There we mark the tonic accent in red. There. And leading up to that, you have a phase of increase, and after that, a phase of decrease. Jubilationibus. Jubilationibus. So, protasis, apodosis. There are some words without any protasis. A protasis is not necessary. For example, let's take this word, dominus. Where is the accent? Here. See, it begins with the tonic accent, and after that follows the phase of decrease. There's an apodosis, but there's no protasis. There's a multitude of words like that with no accent prior to the tonic accent. But there can't be any words in Latin without an apodosis. Can you see why? Look. That's what would be left. Well, it's possible that there be a do, but that's, we said that single syllable word, monosyllables have no accent. Well, let's not take that one then. Let's take this one. and cut it off there. Cut off the apodosis. Jubilatio. Well, that kind of word does not exist in Latin. There are no words in Latin which are accentuated on the last syllable. So every word in Latin has an apodosis. Not necessarily does it have a protasis. The Latin accent par excellence is the tonic accent, which is the principal accent. There are also some secondary accents. The secondary accents are kind of like an echo of the tonic accent, with this in particular, that the tonic accent sends its ripples backward from the tonic accent. That is, from the tonic accent toward the beginning of the word. We're going to see how that works. The quality of the secondary accent is again like an echo. There's a slight intensive and melodic elevation in the secondary accents. A little bit like in the tonic accent, but not quite so pronounced. So let's, how do we find where the secondary accents are located? Well, that's very simple. Like we said, there's a backwards movement. You first go to the tonic accent, then you count back by twos. Every other syllable has a secondary accent, going from the tonic accent back to the beginning of the word. To say it another way, there can be no accent, either secondary or principal, side by side. There has to be another syllable between them. So let's see how that pans out. So let's take our word jubilationibus. Okay, what kind of word is it? Onibus. Accent, the third to last syllable. It's a dactyl. Dactyl. Okay, let's mark in red the tonic accent. Now, what did we say? To find the secondary accent, we count backwards, that is, toward the beginning of the word, and mark every second syllable as a secondary accent. We'll call that SA. So TA, skip this one, SA, secondary accent. Skip this one, secondary accent. Now, there's a special way of marking. The tonic accent is marked with an underline, and the secondary accent is marked with a cross, like that. You're going to see that, especially in the second level, if you pursue your studies until then. Between the secondary accents and the tonic accent are atonic syllables. You remember we've encountered that term once or twice before. Atonic is privative. It's not tonic. Atonic, so atonic syllable, atonic syllable. And we can see the current of accentuation going that way to the accent and then declining. So there we have the necessarily terminology of the and the notion of the Latin accentuation. Two phases, one tending toward the tonic accent and there receiving its summit, and the next phase starting right after and declining, expiring, if you like. And the tonic accent being the heart, the core, the pith of the word, and the secondary accents being a kind of an echo before the tonic accent, preparing, if you like, and passing on a current of accentuation which comes to a ahead at the tonic accent and falls off afterwards. All this is relevant, first of all, for the isolated Latin word. But we should note that when the words come together, they kind of affect one another and mutually, partially change their properties. A little bit like a man in society kind of sometimes changes his character. We can imagine, for example, a strong-willed man who always gets his way, but meets a more stronger-willed woman, marries her, and finds himself meek before an even stronger woman. So that kind of thing happens all the time. By entering into composition, the different elements are modified. Let's see how that turns out with this example. Take now jubilationibus est. Let's write that down. So est is another word. We add that on to jubilationibus, and now we have two words. How does that affect the accentuation? Well, we still have a tonic accent here. And that doesn't change anything before the tonic accent. You're still going to have a secondary accent here and a secondary accent here. However, this syllable is going to take on the character of a secondary accent. And we're going to find out why in the next level. This is not part of the matter here. But this is just to show you that what happens now is that oni becomes an element, and bus est becomes another element, which you call a spondaic formula. See, a spondaic formula is not a spondee. It's a kind of something that feels like a spondee, but lacks the integrity of a spondee. A real spondee is a full word, has a tonic accent, and one syllable afterwards. Now see, here what we, oni does not complete the word. So this is a deficient, if you like, group, and so we call it a spondaic formula. The other instance of a spondaic formula is when the accent is a secondary accent. This is a secondary accent with another word. And this, again, enters into the category of spondaic formula. So in brief, a spondaic formula is anything that is accentuated like a spondee, which isn't a spondee. That doesn't begin with a tonic accent and end with another word, another syllable that completes the word. By the way, latsi and ubi are also spondaic formulas. This is a secondary accent plus an atonic syllable, which does not form a complete word. And latsi, again, secondary accent with an atonic syllable, which is an incomplete word, a part of the word. So all of those are spondaic formulas, whereas a real spondee would be something like deus. It's a full word. Or confecit. There you have the tonic accent plus the final syllable in it. Okay? Spondees, spondaic formula. These notions are going to be considerably deepened in the second level of the course Laus in Ecclesia, when they treat more thoroughly of the psalmody. For right now, we're going to move right on to another related topic, which is the rhythm, no longer the accentuation, but the rhythm of the Latin word. Now, it turns out that the elementary rhythm that we considered a while ago the elementary rhythm fits very well onto the Latin word in order to bring out its rhythm. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a Latin word and, if you like, place above it, combine it with an elementary rhythm to see how the word is structured rhythmically. So we take our classic word for the spondees, Deus. Spondee, huh? Accent on the next to last syllable. Now, we want to rhythm this word. Remember, complete rhythm is one that ends on the fall, which means that in order to rhythm this word, we're going to have to make it end on the fall. Huh? So remember, the elementary rhythm looks like this. It's up, down on the ictus. Huh? Lift, fall, elan, rest. Here, up, down. Huh? There's the rhythm of the spondee in Latin. Now, things can change a little if there are syllables before the accent. It's possible. Take the word, for example, redemptor. Okay, where's the accent? That's a D there. Huh? It's there. Redemptor. Huh? There you have a spondee, but with a syllable before it. An antitonic syllable. So what do we do there? We put our elementary rhythmic curve, redemptor, redemptor. Huh? But what do we do with this? We have to use another curve. We have to use another rhythm which terminates, which falls on that first syllable. Redemptor. Redemptor. Huh? So that is that covers pretty well the case of the spondee. There is, however, another case. There is the spondee and the dactyl. So let's compare the two. Again, we saw Deus is adapted to the elementary rhythm like that. Let's take Dominus now. Dominus, dactyl. And you have a first elementary rhythm here, terminating on the final, because to rhythm a word is to make it end on the fall. So this is a binary rhythm ending on the last syllable, Dominus. But what do we do with this one? Well, we have to again precede with another curve which falls on that syllable, Dominus. Now let's compare the accent on the spondee. Where does it fall with respect to the lift and fall of the elementary rhythm? It's on the lift. For the spondee, the accent is on the lift. For the dactyl, the accent is on the fall. And that characterizes the two types of accentuated words, because the monosyllables aren't accentuated. The spondees and the dactyls are. So the spondee then has the accent on the lift, if you like, an up pulse accent, whereas the The dactyls have the accent on the fall. It's called, or we could call it, a down pulse accent. These two examples show that the ictus is not inseparably linked to the accent. Here, it's the ictus is off the accent, and here it's on the accent. That also explains partially why we had to make several rules to place the accent in syllabic chants. There we concluded the instruction for lesson 10. The exercises comprise some normal exercises plus some exercises of accentuation. I think a brief look at that would be helpful. The first three exercises, track 55, 56, and 57, so you have examples for this, involve up pulse accents. Notice that the accent is on a higher note, always beati, miserere, which corresponds to the natural intonation of the word. You want to make sure that you don't sing this note, the accentuated note, abruptly, rather parachute it, and so to gently fall into the final, which should always be gentle. On the other hand, the next section of three involve dactyls, which have down pulse accents. Here, the accent changes a little bit the quality because it corresponds with the ictus. The coincidence of the ictus with the accent makes a more vigorous impulsion. It's often compared rather interestingly to a kick in the soccer ball, just to show that it's much more vigorous, if you like, which doesn't mean to convey the violence. Violence is never apropos in Gregorian chant, but nevertheless, more of an impulsion and more of a direct sending away of the accent. And of course, here, look at the way the melody is constructed. It goes down from the accent. Dominus omnipotens universitas. So listen to the audio samples. I think here it would be very helpful, and try and imitate. Nothing new for the homework assignment. It's the same kind of things. You have in the excursus another biography of an American woman, Justine Ward, lived at the beginning of the 20th century, and she converted to the Catholic faith. She was a wealthy woman, and upon her conversion was inspired to dedicate all her wealth and musical talent, of which she had a considerable amount, to the propagation of the recent and the promotion of the recent motu proprio of Pius X, Tra le Sollecitudini, which very much recommended to the Church the use of Gregorian chant in the liturgy. To that effect, she came up with a ward method, which you hear about in some, which had a great flowering in the beginning and through the middle of the 20th century, up to through the 60s. You saw children learning chant, when they were very small and becoming very proficient. So this is kind of another inspirational biography. I hope you enjoy it. Next time, we come back to consider a few complementary subjects. We have to deal with a few questions about interpretation, the interpretation of neumes, next lesson, and then the question of repercussions, and then modality. So we'll see you next time to cover the question of how we interpret the individual neumes.